All right, everybody, welcome back to the RedBeard Outdoors podcast. I have an amazing guest here for you guys. His name is Brad Brooks. He is the co-founder and CEO of Argali. You guys, if you're interested in anything outdoorsy with tents, knives, and other things along those lines, you've probably seen Argali's stuff. And so I wanted to get Brad on here to kind of discuss his journey and what he's done because, one, creating a company is a big deal. I'm always interested in people's mindset on how that happened and different stories and learning from them. But also, of course, in the outdoors industry where there's so many tent companies, there's so many shelter companies, and you've found a way to be successful. That's always interesting to me as well. So with that being said, Brad, who are you for those that don't know who you are? And just in a nutshell, who are you?
First of all, thanks for having me on. I'm just a guy who likes to hunt and tries to do it as much as I possibly can. And we make gear for people like me and other people that just really want the best product out there. So yeah, I do a lot of things, wear a lot of hats, but that might be the easiest synopsis I can give for people that don't know me.
No, for sure. And then I guess another question with that is, how do you manage now that you've found a way to create a gear company? How do you manage your time between hunting, because you love hunting, and now that you're in the industry, everyone wants your attention right around hunting season. So how do you do that?
I have a really good team of people who keep our operation running. It's a team effort. So it's not easy to do all the things and also find the time that I want to go outside, but it's not really an option for me. I am a passionate hunter, bow hunter, rifle hunter, whatever, and I've always said that the minute that this whole company becomes not fun is the minute that I get out of the business. So I've been very intentional about creating a company with a culture and a team that allows me to have the space I need when I want to go hunting. I think the other thing is I just have to be very, very disciplined with my time. So but it's a constant battle. The battle gets harder every single year as we've grown. But it's just, to be honest with you, my sanity is directly tied to my time outside in wild places. So I just feel like I don't really have an option other than to go on hunts and to be outside as much as I can. And I do prioritize it in my life. And I've also, that is one of the nice thing about having your own company is you can make decisions about how you're going to prioritize your time.
Exactly. No, that's amazing. And it's cool that you bring up that you've got a good team because you don't have it all on your shoulders. Obviously, it's your company, but building that team is huge. And for people that are successful, but at the same time are able to go out and enjoy still their passions, like you with hunting and getting outside and living what you're creating gear for. That's having a good team is key. It's not easy to find good people you can trust, so you're not stressing while you're up on the mountain. But at the same time, once you do find that team, it's a great experience. So that's awesome. Kudos to you.
Yeah, no, we're fortunate, lucky that I have people who have the same value set, the belief in our brand, belief in our company, and are as committed to it as I am. Because without them, it wouldn't work, right? I wouldn't be able to go mess around. For example, I think, was it 2 years ago now? I spent almost 6 weeks up in Alaska.
Wow.
And it was hard to get that set up so I could do that. I spent almost 10 months trying to get the company to a point where I could just be gone for a while. It was still really difficult. It was a burden on other people. It is a burden on other people when I'm gone. But at the same time, I wanted to do it. And we had, we put the right processes and procedures in place so I could do it. So it is it's a joy to be able to do that, and a privilege.
No, that's amazing. Well, let's start from the beginning here. When did you get into hunting and the outdoors? What was the start, catalyst for you to be able to get into the outdoors?
Very stereotypical upbringing. I grew up here in Idaho, where I'm still based. in a family that spent a lot of time outside. So as a kids, we traveled, fished, camped. That was a really common part of my summer and summers as a kid. My dad is from Wisconsin. He's sort of your stereotypical Midwestern hunter in all the best of ways. And so we would hunt big game a bit as a kid, but it wasn't all the time. We'd spend a week here or there. I would get pulled out of school to go elk and deer hunting for a week, which was always one of the highlights of my year. We did a lot of bird hunting. My dad was a big waterfowl hunter, so therefore I was a big waterfowl hunter growing up. Did a lot of upland bird hunting. So we just did a bit of everything. And big game was a part of what we hunted, but it certainly wasn't the focus of what I did growing up. But certainly just spent lots and lots of time outside. And it wasn't until I became a little older where I really found that was the thing that I really liked doing the most, and kind of just started doing more of it on my own. I still, like all the way through college, I still bird hunted quite a bit. I got a German short hair when I was a junior in college, and spent a lot of time chucker hunting with her, which was a lot of fun. I also played sports in college in the fall. I was a soccer player, which didn't leave a lot of time for big game hunting when I was in school. I think one of the things that did for me, though, was when I got out of school, I felt like I wasn't good enough to go pro. And I got to this point where I missed hunting so much. I felt like I had spent 4 years just focused on school and sports that I kind of went wild with big game hunting. That's really when I started backpack hunting. And at the time, I knew zero people that backpack hunted at all. It wasn't a thing that I was even aware of other people did. It was something that I did just because I liked being in wild country. I liked backpacking, and it seemed like a natural way for me to sort of get into some country where I wasn't going to run into other hunters. And so that was really the beginning of the style of hunting that I do a lot of today, and I think is really common and popular. Like when I say I got into backpack hunting, like now it's like, who doesn't backpack hunt in the West? Everybody does, or not everybody, but a lot of people do. But back then, I genuinely didn't know anybody that was doing it. There were people that were doing it, but there wasn't a culture of backpack hunters. There wasn't a culture of backpack hunting on social media. It just didn't exist. So it felt like I was just doing this thing where simultaneously there were other people doing it. But those early days of backpack hunting were really formative in sort of solidifying the style and way in which I liked hunting, and also helped sort of confirm the type of hunting that I really like doing the most.
No, that definitely makes sense to me. That's a big deal that people. I feel like a lot of people don't quite understand the impact that parents have on their kids. That's the fact that you say a typical upbringing, but honestly, nowadays, I don't know if it's so typical to be able to get your kids out there. And I grew up the same way in North Carolina. I loved father-son campouts. We'd go to the Boy Scout camps. I was in Boy Scouts, and we were always outside fishing, doing stuff whenever we could. And so that was ingrained in me. But I do feel like there's a lot of people, especially if you get into a workplace where it's an office setting, they just go home and they kind of want to tune out and watch Netflix and do whatever. And their kids see that and they grow up and forget, especially here you're in Idaho, I'm in Utah. We have some amazing country to be able to explore. And you're not going to find that on the TV screen. And so, as parents, that's such a big thing for me, that I want to get the kids outside as much as possible. Even if it is just to the park today, I want to get them outside because they need to understand they feel better. They enjoy it. They make friends. There's so many positives to getting outside. So I love that your dad incorporated that. But definitely got to keep that, pass it forward, if you want to put it that way. And
Yeah, 100%. I have 2 kids, 2 little girls, and do the same thing. And maybe I when I said like stereotypical, I meant like it's stereotypical for a lot of maybe a lot of other people that hunt, is they sort of were passed on tradition from their parents, or their family members in some way. But yeah, I don't think it's the amount of time that I spent as a kid outside is probably not that common when you compare it to the rest of the American population.
Yep.
But it was really, like I said, it was just really important for, I think, who I am today. And I may not even understand how important it is, but I know that, being outside is just a really key, integral part of my mental sanity and mental health. And it probably does stem from my childhood in some way. There's probably also something just innate in humans about our need and desire to be outside and not in an office like you and I are both right now.
Yeah, right.
So
exactly. I'm blessed to be able to work from home, so I can just take my kids out whenever I've got time. But yeah, no, I understand, man. If I could, my office would be where were we at? Oh, we're at my brother-in-law's house the other day, and they just redid their deck. And man, I walked out there and I told my wife, I'm like, if we do this to our deck, I will never come inside. Like I will roll a sleeping mat out. Like it's gorgeous. I'll work out there, like just amazing. And man, it's just something that I think each and every one of us have inside of us. And sometimes it takes a little bit to awaken that if it's been, I don't know, not encouraged as a kid. And then you grew up, became an adult, and you sit at a desk, watch TV, do all those things. You forget how amazing it is to get out there and adventure, and the views you can see that even the best cameras in the world can't capture. When you get up on some of these mountaintops, or just the calm, crisp morning on a fall morning, and you get up there and you just see the sunrise. And like there's so many things in the outdoors that get lost in the shuffle of day to day. So anyway, I love that. I love that you grew up that way, and that your dad would take you out of school. Yes, I do encourage that. I'm not saying not to encourage that. I do. I love that. So that's amazing. So then you got into backpacking. You came out west, grew up out here, and then what got you started towards this idea of creating Argali? And then for people out there that don't know, like you should look up Argali for sure, because you've got an amazing system that I like with the shelter system. But I guess first, where did Argali come from? What did that start with?
Yeah, good question. So let's see. So grew up here, like I mentioned, started after college, like really started doing this adventure hunting thing, and just fell in love with it. And I became obsessed with it. Not obsessed, again, like I didn't have social media at the time. Like there was no company. I was just doing it because I loved it. And I was trying to do as much of it as I possibly could. And so that was my life, right? I was just like into this thing. And I had this friend, Jason, who was a filmmaker, and he moved away to Missoula to go to film school. He came back to Boise, and we were catching up, having a beer one night when he got back into town. And I had this idea while we were sitting there, because we were talking about hunting media, and I was just telling him, like, I really, at the time, there wasn't a whole lot of hunting media that I really related with. Most hunting media was on the Sportsman's Channel. Meat Eater was around. That was really the only thing that I really enjoyed that was on like the Sportsman's Channel. Most of it was just completely unrelatable to me because it just wasn't something that I could connect with. It was all about how big was that animal. It wasn't about like spending time in these incredible wild places. And I innately knew then and know now that most hunters, like if you hunt, even if you don't hunt, if you fish, if you just spend time outside, there are probably one or two places that are really memorable for you, important to you for whatever reason. Maybe you spent time there with your parents growing up. Maybe it's just a beautiful place that really speaks to you. But if I ask you, to close your eyes and go to your happy place, you're going to go to a place that you connect with, and that's a place you connect with. Maybe you killed a big animal there. That's an action or a thing that happened to you, but the place is really what mattered. And so we had this idea while we're sitting there, to create a film that was really focused on the value and importance of place. And that night we just decided we should make a film. I'm not a filmmaker. I don't have a background in filmmaking, but he did. But I also felt like I understood the story, like I had a really clear vision of the story I wanted to tell. So we made this film called Chasing Ridgelines that was about my brother and I, and my older brother and I. And that film, there was no company, right? We weren't trying to do anything other than tell a story that I thought was really, I just felt the need to tell the story, felt the need to do it, but there was no plan after that. So we made that film. That film did, fairly well for us in terms of like film festival exposure, just exposure in the world, and got us some attention. So my buddy Jason and I thought, let's do one more film. That was fun. Let's do another film next season. And it's like, well, what story do you want to tell? So we sold another story. It was after that second film where we started getting a lot of questions about the gear we were using. And if you watch those films, you'll notice that they are adventure style films that are really about the adventure that we went on. And it occurred to me that there was probably a business in there somewhere. At the time, again, I felt like there weren't a lot of options if you were trying to get into this backpack hunting thing or this adventure hunting thing, to know like how to sift through the mass of gear out there and know like what actually works versus like which stuff is just kind of garbage, like poorly designed, but marketed really well. So hard to tell. It's hard to tell today. It was hard to tell back then. And so I decided to create this website where we would sell a curated list of products. And that was the first iteration of the business, is that we would have a curated retail store where we only sold products that we personally used or we could vouch for based on real experience in the field. So that's really kind of where it started. So we kind of started out as like a media company and then transitioned into a product-based business.
No, that's amazing. That's really cool. And it is interesting how many people out there are interested in gear. I'm one of those gear junkies. I love to do gear reviews and test new stuff and figure out because there's so much out there there's so many things that could be applied to kind of general. You can use one thing for many possibilities, but there's also some things that are very niche, certain knives or things like that you're not going to use in the kitchen, but you're going to use to backpack hunt, but you may not also use it for, camp hunting, like from the truck, because you maybe want a heavier duty knife there. So there's so many different things that you can go down the rabbit hole with. And I love that you guys started with first telling a story and then recognizing that there was this idea or need for answering questions on gear. And then on top of that, you didn't just start selling whatever, like you sold what you believed in, which obviously you're not trying to hit every single person on the market, because there's some stuff that you're going to use that I may not use, right? But people trusted your opinions. They saw that you guys went out and did it through your storytelling and your videos and media. And then from there, I mean, that's awesome that it just took off.
Yeah. We've transitioned a number of times as a business, right? So like and I don't know how much you want to get into that, but like that was the first iteration of our business. And it's transformed a number of times since then. We've had a lot of dead ends and done some things that didn't work. We've done some things that have worked. It took us a while to figure out who we were as a brand, as a company. But at the core of it was always this idea that we're just people that, like I said in the intro, I'm just a guy who likes to hunt, and I try and do a lot of it. I like adventure hunting. And when you do that, you really need good gear to help you have a good time. Like, you don't have to have expensive gear, but good gear sure as heck makes a big difference when you're spending a lot of time outside hunting. And we've always, like, everything we've done is really, it feels like we're just creating gear for ourselves. Like, I'm just making things that I want to use. And our philosophy has always been sort of, I hope other people see the value in what we're creating as well. But I've never had to think, we've never entered a product or made a product with the approach of, man, what is it that hunters want? Because we don't know, but let's just like look at some market research. No, it's always been based off of what we see and feel the needs are based on experience in the field, not trying to guess what people need, which has really given us, I feel like, a leg up in the world, because we're just we are our customers, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. No, I definitely appreciate that aspect of it. And personally, when I do my own gear reviews, it's very similar where, there's so many things out there that you could just test. You can go on Amazon and buy a bunch of cheap stuff, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I love giving quality reviews on things that I believe in and I will use, and explaining, how to use those items and why I would use them. And so, like, my friends always tell me I'm an expensive friend to have, because when I get passionate about something and it's a gear item, like, I can talk your ear off about it and every single thing that I've loved about it, how I've used it, etc. Um, and they're always like, you always make us want to buy it, not because you're trying to sell us something, but because you genuinely believe in that product. And so I love that approach that you guys take, because you could have a bunch of suits sitting there looking at research and all this, and it works to a degree, but at the same time, the fact that you've got basically a resume of using these items and how you would use them is more than likely how a lot of people who actually go out and use the gear will use it. So I think that's something that a lot of people crave, is just that direct knowledge, not just a numbers spreadsheet thing, but something that you've actually used, put through the works, and then come out to market with. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
So with that being said, what was the first item that you guys made as Argali, like your own
Yeah. It
branded?
was game bags. I feel like it feels like today everybody makes a game bag. There's a lot of options out there. I suppose. But at the time, when we made ours, there weren't. It was, in terms of like technical reusable game bags, there were a couple options out there that I thought were decent, but not great. And I think it stemmed from me being a little frustrated with a product I was using when I was out in the field, that I felt like had some cheap materials worked into an
Mm.
otherwise like decent product. For starters, the paracord on game bags at the time that you close the bag with was always cheap cloth material that couldn't handle any weight. So, you know, I feel like what I did is sit down with a simple product and design something where we didn't cut any corners. Like, the entire product was really, really well thought out, designed for technical performance, and sized in a way to simplify the number of products that people need to buy. So instead of selling like a game bag set for pronghorn, a different one for deer, and a different one for sheep, I felt like, as a consumer, the size of those animals is such that you could sell one product for people that they could use for all those animals, and that's just like it reduces the number of stuff people need to buy. First of all, which is to me, it's like an honest relationship with our customers. I mean, like, I could make you a branded pronghorn game bag set, but you don't need it. Or we could just make you, one game bag set that works for any deer size game, any of them, and not try and just market a product just because we can sell it. That would annoy me as a consumer, and so it allowed us to, I think, create a real honest relationship up front with our customers. So we brought that. Like to say, we brought technical design to game bags, and it did really well for us early on. Surprised me that we sold out of our first run of game bags in a couple of weeks. So we made some, and it's not like we made a million of them, but we made a number that I thought was more than we could sell, and we sold out of them right away. And that shocked me, surprised me, made me happy, but also made me sad because I underestimated what we could do. But we were a new company making a new product as a company that had never made anything before. So it felt like a huge gamble. And I used, my wife and I used our savings to fund that. So it felt like we were putting a lot of our money on the line, and we were, to do that. Since then I've put a lot more money of our own money into our company, but that first time, I think, was the scariest.
No, that definitely makes sense. And yeah, there's, I again, I guess what's the right word? I don't know. I just lost it. But basically, I respect, I guess would be, I have a high level of respect for people like yourself that start these companies and put your own money into it. Like you don't go out and crowdsource and fund that way for everything. You've put your money, your blood, sweat, tears into this product, and honestly, like I can understand where you come from, where you're like you're putting all this on the line, and then you end up selling out. So like on one end you're super excited, and then on the other end you're like, dang it, like that was a gamble I should have taken. But at the same time, you were super successful. So those are those constant entrepreneur emotions that happen where you're like, all right, am I going to gamble on this? Okay, I'll gamble a little bit more, and then maybe that time it's not as good. But then the other times where you're like, oh, I'm going to be more conservative, and then it like blows you out of the water. So there's always those moments, and that's cool to hear. So you're right, game bags. There's so many of them, again, saturated in the market, but the fact that you looked at and you were like, these are ones that we've used, and let's make them better. I absolutely love that mindset rather than sitting back and complaining and being a keyboard warrior and going out and be like, oh, these bags suck, blah blah blah. You were like, I'm just gonna make something better. Like
Yeah.
nothing against this company, but I want something better. It's not out there. I'm gonna go do it. I definitely respect that mindset and absolutely love that. So you built the game bags, and then what was after game bags?
That was the next thing we made were hunting knives. So we actually made just one knife. And talk about a world with lots of options, right? Like there's 10,000, a million different knives out there. But again, I just felt like the knife that I really wanted, nothing was like kind of perfect for what I'm very particular, if you haven't figured it out by now, about what I like. And
Yep.
it just felt like there were a lot of really good options, but not a lot of great options out there for hunting specifically. And mostly what I was trying to figure out is how to create the right shape and design of a knife that also had the right angle, bevel angle, that was really focused in on creating a functional hunting tool at the right weight. And that was our carbon knife, was the first knife I ever designed, we ever made. And it still has, like, I'd say, like, a cult following. There are people that love that knife so much. And I love it still. We've made other knives since then, but that one to me was really my ideal sort of jack of all trades knife for field butchering any animal. It's a personal preference thing. There's a lot of people that like different styles of knife for different reasons, based on the way in which they butcher, etc. But that knife, and that was a process, man. Just getting a knife made was really complicated. In fact, getting game bags made was complicated. It was not easy. Lots of headaches. Almost, the game bags. While I was making that knife, we were making more game bags. We had a bad sewing batch of game bags at the time that damn near sank us because we had, it was like it's just like manufacturing problems. You're going to go through them at some point. If you make a physical product, nothing is going to be perfect. It happens to everybody, but at the time it felt like it was just going to sink us because I care so much about quality. I care about our customer experience so much that while I was working on that knife, we had this game bag issue come up, and it was like, all right, maybe this is the end. Maybe this is the end of us, because I have to like give all these people like the right proper product, and I'm gonna have to fund that. We're gonna have to fund that out of the company's budget. So anyways, but yeah, so the carbon knife was the first knife we made.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the site right now. So we've got the carbon knife, which is more of that. It's got a good belly on it, but it's a little bit more slender.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's skeletonized handle. Is that G10 on the handles?
Yeah, it's textured G10 on there. Yep.
Awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, that's always good for, especially when you get blood on your hands or your gloves, whatever you're using. It gets a little slick.
And we made that so it has like a long, skinny blade that has a curvature from the handle, from the back of the handle all the way to the tip of the cutting area. And that curvature on the top combined with the belly on the bottom give you this really nice hand feel that is kind of good at everything. So whether you're like skinning, deboning, whatever you're doing to field butcher an animal, you've got complete control of that knife. You've got a lot of real estate on the cutting surface, a long runway there, which, when you spread out the use of your knife over a longer area, that knife will tend to feel like it's staying sharper a lot longer because you're spreading out the use over that cutting surface, right? Instead of concentrating it. Some knife shapes are designed such that you end up using a very small percentage of the cutting surface a lot more. So it feels like your knife dulls out a lot quicker. So this is where like the art of knife design comes in, figuring out how to create a cutting surface where you're truly spreading out the use of the knife over that entire real estate frontage that is the cutting surface of the blade. The carbon does a really good job of that, and it's also made out of S35 VN steel, which is a super really steel. I still think it's one of the best possible steels for big game hunting application because it holds an edge incredibly long time, but you can also field sharpen it if you need to. It's not so hard that you can't get an edge back on it if you want. So it is a kind of a jack of all trades knife. It kind of surprised me when I was maybe a year or two ago. I had a sheep guide up in Alaska reach out and tell me that he's been using it for years and since we came out with it, and he told me that like, yeah man, there's a bunch of sheep guides love this knife, and I was like, really? It's like one of those things I had no idea it was a thing, but it just kind of speaks to for whatever reason the product works well and has gained a reputation because of the weight, the shape, and the functionality of it in certain places, and that still persists to this day.
Yeah, no, that's really awesome. And I really like it. I like the design just looking at it here. I think the one that I've mainly seen at shows is the Serac.
Yeah.
Is that how you pronounce it?
You nailed it.
Okay, the Serac.
Yeah.
And that one draws my attention as well, but the carbon is pretty sweet. It's definitely got that more slender. It's not quite Havalon slender, but it's it's got a good belly on it. And then I was noticing that curvature as well. That's pretty cool. Definitely more ergonomic. So that's awesome. That's really cool. And then I guess walk us through the Serac knife, because what I'm personally noticing here and what I remember just seeing it at shows, that's a knife that for me kind of stands out. One, because the jimping on the top, especially near the point of the blade where you can put your index finger on and get kind of in those deeper areas. It looks a little bit beefier, so you can kind of beat up on it a little bit more. And it's still got the skeletonized grip, the G10 grip on it. So I guess what was the thought behind that one?
Yeah, you just nailed it. So like we got feedback after we came out the carbon that some people were like, I just like a deeper belly, they're like, I like more of a skinning style blade. And I'm never going to create a product just to have another product if it doesn't add some value or solve some problem. So we started working on the Serac. I wanted something that had exactly like what you just described, like a little deeper belly to it for people that preferred that shape. But I didn't want to just have like a skinning knife. I want our knives to be do-it-all knives for hunting. A traditional skinner is going to be like big fat belly on it, but a traditional skinner is also kind of useless for anything other than skinning. And I'm not going to carry like multiple knives personally when I'm out hunting. I'm not going to carry like one for skinning and then one for deboning and then one for caping. Like I'm going to take one knife. That's it.
You don't want like 10 pounds of knives in your backpack?
What's that?
You don't want like 10 pounds of knives in your backpack?
No, I don't personally. I do remember growing up as a kid though, my dad would have like a field butchering kit and he would have like 5 knives with him. And it would roll up in like a leather pouch.
That's what I was just about to say. Was it a big leather sheet? That's awesome.
Yes. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yep.
So yeah, so the Serac was created to sort of to be that middle of the road skinning style blade that still has that modified drop point on it on the tip. So you can still do all the fine detail work you need. You can still debone. You can still get in tight spaces if you're doing the gutless method. Getting back straps out, it still does really well at all of that. It just has a little bit different blade profile to it. And then it also has a ferro rod striker cut into the top there. Honestly, we sell equal numbers roughly of Cerax and carbons. So it's a wash on whether or not on what people prefer. But there are people who are like, Cerac is my blade. And there are people who are like, no, carbon is my blade. There are strong loyalties to both of those styles, depending on personal preference. And it really does just come down to like, what do you like? And what is the style of knife that you like? And people have very different opinions on those, and there isn't a wrong one. It's just personal preference.
Yeah, no, for sure. I would definitely be in the Cerac group. But I also agree that there's so many different knives for different purposes. Again, going back to kind of what I was saying at the beginning there, there's a good knife for everything, but you also don't want to be that guy that's carrying that leather sheath around with, 10 different knives. It comes in handy when your buddies forget theirs and they're coming to help you clean an animal or something like that. But it can cause some weight in your pack. I was going to ask you about that little divot there at the top in between the jimping, but that makes sense to have that ferro rod striker. Yeah. So that's cool. I like that. And the aesthetics of it, like for me, the Cerac definitely stands out a little bit more. Is that just beefier knife.
Yeah.
So
it looks beefier. I think it fits guys with bigger hands a little better because it has a bigger choil in it. So where the part where you put your index finger, it has a really nice hand feel to it. And certainly if you grab our knives, like the one thing everybody notices about the Cerac is you put it in your hand, you're just like, it just feels nice. You're like, I feel like I have complete control over this blade.
Yep. And what I can remember too, even though it is a little bit beefier, it's still a really lightweight blade.
You're 2 ounces really.
Yeah, that's not bad at all. Well, that's awesome. Okay, so knives, and then so we talked about knives, game bags. So you guys have, and I guess I haven't been on the site in a while, but just looking here, you've got trekking poles, and then my biggest thing that I want to get to is the tents, because again, all of these items, I mean, you guys have come into the market and you're making items that I'm going to keep addressing this way, but a saturated market, because it really is the outdoor industry. There's everything from the cheap Walmart tents all the way up to the most expensive tents that you can find that weigh less than a feather and cost you $2,000. And everything in between. So there's so many tents out there and shelters. I personally have not gone the shelter route because I don't like to wake up with bugs in my mouth or in my beard or, ticks or what. Like for me, I want to be able to lay down, sleep. And the worst thing that's going to happen to me is maybe a bear. And I'm okay with that. At that point, you're just kind of screwed. But I don't want to deal with bugs while I'm sleeping. So what stood out to me is your tents are dual purpose. So you can have them as a shelter, a hot shelter, or you can purchase the insert, and I'm just noticing here, you've got even half inserts. So that's awesome. So walk me through I guess you've got the Rincon and you've even got a 1-person tent. Okay. Walk me through your tents.
Yeah, you bet. So again, our journey as a company has been that we have come out with products that we feel like are filling a niche or a need based on our experience in the field. One of the key reasons that we created tents is the fabric. So we use a ripstop, nano ripstop silk polyester fabric for our tents. The reason that we created tents is I own a lot of tents. I have used a lot of tents. And especially when you start getting into the single pole tents, so like single pole in the middle, either pyramid style or teepee style, which I use a lot of, they're all pretty much made out of nylon fabric. The nylon is a great fabric, but the downside of nylon is it sags tremendously when it gets wet. So you get heavy condensation, you get snow, you get rain, and it just eats away at the usable space inside your tent to a degree that is so annoying. I can't overstate it. I genuinely can't. And the problem is that nylon absorbs water vapor, even if it's your tent is waterproof, but water vapor can still get through the waterproof coating into the actual fibers of the fabric, and it causes those fibers then stretch when they get saturated with water. So it's just part of the properties of nylon. And I think I got so annoyed. I was like, there's got to be a better fabric out there than nylon. So, and polyester has been used by companies for a long time. There are cheap polyesters and there are cheap nylons, and there are many companies like Walmart tents, for example, or tents that you can get at Walmart that would use like a cheap polyester. And for years, it was like, polyester was branded as this inferior, weaker, cheaper fabric. So we started doing our own research, and it turns out that it's not. Like, technology is caught up, and polyester, there are some really high grade polyesters that we started playing around with, and they don't have any stretch. They're naturally hydrophobic, meaning the fabric can't absorb water. So you can have these lightweight fabrics that don't have the same stretch issues that nylon has. So that was a key reason we created our tent line. And then the other thing is, there are shapes, sizes, and weights that I felt like were a little bit more functional, and feature sets on those tents that I felt like were a little bit more practical and functional based on the hunting situations. For example, putting line locks on all the bottom of our tent so you can adjust the pitch depending on how level the ground you're on is, making the way in which they pitch incredibly easy, simple, so you don't, when you're setting up your tent in the dark, which I do all the time, you're not fussing around with it. It's just consistent across our entire tent line. So we launched last year a 2 and a 4 person tent, our Rincon 2P and our Absaroka 4P, which are pyramid style tents. And then this year we launched our Owyhee 1P tent. And I've got more coming out next year, but that's what we've got in our tent line right now. All of them have been, we've been fairly meticulous about the size, the shape, and the way they pitch, and also trying to make, a minimalist shelter that has, you can run it as a floorless shelter with a stove, which we also have now. Or you can run them with an insert. So, if you want a full double wall coverage bathtub floor and mosquito netting, you can run them with both pieces together. So it gives you, we call them modular designs. So you can run them just with the rainfly portion. You can run them with an insert and the rainfly. You've got options as a user and a consumer based on what you're doing and the time of year. So like during summer scouting season, I'm going to take an insert because mosquitoes and bugs are an issue. During hunting season, I pretty much only go floorless. Just the way I like to do it. Mm-hmm. But most people carry both pieces throughout the year. That's so it gives you some options. But yeah, that's kind of the genesis of our tent line.
No, that's amazing. And I know we're coming up here on you've got a hard stop because you're a busy man and wear all the hats. So, but I definitely wanted to just say, guys, like people out there listening, if you haven't heard of Argali, first off, where have you been? But second off, go check them out. And I really do love the tents. I love the idea. And like I said, for me personally, that's why I've stayed away from shelters is in cold weather season. I'd be okay with it because obviously you want the heat. Haven't delved into that 100% yet, but for warmer weather, definitely prefer to have that insert. And I love that you can do both. And you've even come out with an even cooler idea that I haven't seen where it's half the tent is an insert and the other half is you can either sleep floorless, you can put a heater in it, a stove, or you can just use it as an extra space for storage. And it doesn't need to be in your insert itself. So guys, definitely go check out the tents are what really drove my interest in your company. And then you've got tons of other stuff. So again, great gear made by people who actually use it. I guess wrapping up here, what would be something maybe you want to leave with the listeners? Is there anything maybe we haven't brought up that you want to throw in there?
Oh man, that's a good question. I don't know. I'd say, if anybody wants to check out our products, I'd encourage you to take a look at them. We really try and make all of our gear specifically designed for and by hunters. And there's a reason behind everything we make, all of the details and everything. You don't have to agree with it, but there's a reason behind it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess probably all I got to say.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to leave the links down below, guys, for everyone out there listening or watching this. Go check out Argali. I'm going to leave their social media links and their website link down below. Get your gear now before hunting season, so you're not scrambling last minute when things aren't available, because everyone else is scrambling last minute as well. And as I always say, guys, get out, live your life, and love it.